They told us Tupac died in Vegas, shot in a drive-by, spent 6 days in the hospital, then he was gone. Case closed. Except, what if that wasn't the end of the story? What if the truth was never in the hospital room, but locked in a phone? Call, a federal file, and a quiet look from Tupac's own brother, a man who just sat on national television and said, "You've all been lied to." We're not talking about some internet theorist or clout-chaser. This is Mopreme Shakur, Tupac's actual brother. Same home, same childhood, same war-torn industry, and the way he looked into the camera? Calm, controlled, but burning with something deeper. Like a man who's been sitting on secrets for decades. And now, with Diddy facing criminal charges, federal raids, and a media collapse that looks like the fall of an empire, Mopreme decided it was time to speak, and what he said might change everything. For almost 30 years, Mopreme stayed quiet. He let the rumors swirl, the documentaries repeat themselves, and the official version of Tupac's death become gospel. But that silence? It wasn't because he agreed, it was because he was waiting. And now, he's done waiting. In a rare appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Mopreme didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw out wild accusations, he didn't need to. His doubt said it all. When Piers asked him point blank if he believed Diddy's denials, all the times Diddy said he had nothing to do with Tupac's murder, Mopreme barely blinked. "I can't go until this is straight," he said. "I can't leave until y'all really know what time it is." Read between the lines. If your brother was murdered and you actually believed the police, the investigation, the reports, would you still be publicly demanding answers decades later? No. You'd move on. You'd make peace. But Mopreme, he's still in the fight, still dropping subtle clues that the truth isn't what we were told. And now he's saying it out loud, and it gets even more intense when he talks about a phone call, a call from Diddy himself. The year was 2008. Tupac had been gone for 12 years. The world had already moved on. But Diddy? He was still losing sleep over the rumors, the whispers connecting him to the Vegas shooting. And instead of ignoring them, he picked up the phone. He called Mopreme Shakur, the victim's brother. Let that sink in. Diddy, who had always denied any connection, who'd built a billion-dollar brand off his image, who could have stayed silent, chose to personally call Tupac's family and beg them to believe he was innocent. And it wasn't just a quick check-in. "I just want you to know I ain't have nothing to do with your brother's, Diddy said, stumbling over his words. "I know who you are, but we never met." This wasn't a statement, it was a plea. And Mopreme, he didn't yell. He didn't argue. He gave Diddy something far more terrifying than anger. He gave him a prophecy. The truth always comes out. 4 words. That's all. And Diddy must have felt it in his chest. Because here we are 17 years later, and that truth Mopreme warned him about, it's clawing its way to the surface. Here's where things start getting hard to deny. Because while Mopreme was holding his silence and Diddy was dodging questions, someone else was talking. Keffe D. He's the man who claims he was in the car the night Tupac was shot, and he's now facing federal M charges for it. But what's more explosive than the charges are the recordings. Federal interrogation tapes. Hours of Keffe D talking to law enforcement, with microphones running and agents taking notes. And on those tapes, Diddy's name comes up 47 times. That's not a typo. 47 times, and not in passing. Keffe D didn't just mention him. He described what allegedly happened. According to him, Diddy offered millions for Tupac and Suge Knight to be handled. He even quoted the exact words, "I'll give anything for that dude's head." These tapes aren't from some sketchy YouTube channel or blog. They were sitting in evidence lockers for years, collected, cataloged, hidden, and now they're resurfacing at the exact same time Diddy's empire is crumbling under federal racketeering charges. Coincidence or karma? Because these recordings, these 47 mentions, may be the beginning of the end for Diddy's carefully constructed narrative. The one where he's the untouchable mogul, the party king, the clean-cut legend of hip-hop. Now, he's the guy whose name shows up in federal M evidence, and it gets even crazier. Because when agents raided his mansions, they didn't just find money, drugs, or hard drives. They found something way more bizarre. Coming up next, Cuban documents, a missing bodyguard, a government exile, and the smoking G that could prove Tupac never died at all. So here's the part nobody expected. When federal agents raided Diddy's mansions in connection with the current racketeering charges, they weren't looking for anything related to Tupac. This wasn't about the 90s. It was about now. Fraud, blackmail, human trafficking allegations, the whole operation. But buried in Diddy's personal documents was one single word: Cuba. That's all it took for every Tupac conspiracy to roar back to life. Because Cuba? That's not just a random location. It's where Assata Shakur, Tupac's aunt and former Black Panther, has been living in exile since 1984, protected by the Cuban government after escaping a US prison. And for decades, fans have whispered that Tupac might have followed her. Now we've got actual federal agents finding Cuban-related files in Diddy's possession during a criminal raid. These weren't tourist brochures. These were reportedly financial documents and correspondences that referenced Cuba in contexts prosecutors haven't yet disclosed. And here's where it gets even more wild. Back in the early 2000s, a man named Michael Nice started making headlines. He wasn't some internet troll or random fan. He claimed to be Tupac's former bodyguard. And for years, he told a bizarre but strangely specific story. He said Tupac didn't die in Las Vegas. Instead, Nice claimed he helped switch the body at the hospital, smuggled Tupac out on a private jet, flew to Barbados, and then transferred him to Cuba under Fidel Castro's personal protection. Everyone dismissed him, said he was crazy, but then he promised to release the proof. He said he had video, documents, and testimony from people who helped pull it off, and just before the release, Michael Nice vanished, gone. No warning, no body. Just disappeared. The timing was too perfect, too suspicious. And the story, it was suddenly much harder to laugh at, because now we have Diddy's personal Cuba files, found during a federal raid, sitting in the hands of prosecutors. Add that to the fact that eyewitness reports in Havana have described seeing a man with Tupac's build, moving quietly, ducking into cafes, disappearing into the alleys over the years. No clear photos, no confirmation, just grainy footage, and endless rumors. And suddenly Michael Nice doesn't sound so crazy. And now let's get back to Vegas. Let's talk about what was supposed to be the most open and shut celebrity murder in history. Tupac was in a BMW on one of the busiest nights in Las Vegas, after a Mike Tyson fight, no less. Thousands of tourists, hundreds of cameras, traffic everywhere, and somehow no one saw the shooter. No clear witnesses, no surveillance footage, just chaos, and then silence. Then the coroner's report comes in. Basic facts like Tupac's height and weight are wrong, not slightly wrong. Wrong enough that fans and journalists started asking, whose body was this really? And then something truly bizarre happened. The cremator who allegedly handled Tupac's body retired immediately as and finished that one job and left the profession forever. No interviews, no statements, nothing. Who does that? Who walks away from the biggest celebrity case of their career without so much as a press release? Unless maybe there was something they didn't want to answer for. And then you remember what Suge Knight said back in 2014 when asked why no one had ever been arrested for Tupac's death. He didn't blink. "'Cause Tupac not gone," he laughed. "I'm the protected Tupac." And people thought he was joking. But when you start looking at all these coincidences, the wrong autopsy data, the vanished cremator, the lack of witnesses, and the trail of Cuba-linked documents in Diddy's files, it stops sounding like a theory and starts sounding like a plan. Coming up next, Diddy's alleged criminal enterprise, the blackmail system, the threats, and how his empire of control might explain why nobody talked about Tupac's death for nearly 30 years. When we talk about what happened in Vegas in 1996, everyone loves to focus on the chaos, the fight at the MGM, the speeding BMW, the hail of bullets. But what nobody ever talks about is what didn't happen. No arrests, no real suspects, no progress for 27 years. And yet, everyone in the industry seemed to know something they weren't saying. Witnesses vanished. Files went missing. People went quiet. And the ones who did speak, they either retracted their statements or disappeared altogether. Now think about Diddy's current legal troubles. We're in 2025, and even now, witnesses involved in his modern-day cases are disappearing. Victim number 3 in one lawsuit? Her own lawyer can't even locate her. If people are going off-grid now, with federal protection, digital surveillance, and non-stop media, What kind of silencing power do you think Diddy had back in 1996, back when the stakes were even higher? And the cover-up meant everything. Let's stop pretending this is just about music. According to current prosecutors, Bad Boy Records wasn't just a record label. It was a full-blown criminal enterprise, racketeering, coercion, arson, financial crimes. Even allegations of forced acts filmed at infamous freak-off parties and used for blackmail. The accusations say Diddy hosted these events to compromise people, make them vulnerable, and then control them, silence them. Sound familiar? Because when you look at the Vegas investigation with that lens, the mysterious silence, the lack of leads, the people who vanished, suddenly it doesn't seem like incompetence. It seems like strategy. The same tactics Diddy's being accused of now might be the same ones that kept the truth about Tupac buried for nearly 3 decades. A network of threats, leverage, fear. A machine designed to keep people from ever speaking out. Let's talk logistics. If, and this is a big if, Tupac really did fake his death and escape to Cuba, this wasn't some DIY stunt. It would have taken serious coordination. Medical, staff, police, airport security, immigration, government officials, intelligence operatives, people in the US, and people in Cuba, all staying quiet for nearly 30 years. That's not a cover-up. That's a covert operation. And if Diddy was in possession of Cuba-related files, if he had communications, financial transfers, or surveillance material connected to Tupac or Assata Shakur, that doesn't just mean he knew, it might mean he helped. And if federal prosecutors decide to make those documents public, we're not talking about tabloid drama anymore. We're talking about international espionage, political protection, and a multi-decade deception that fooled an entire generation. Because if Tupac really survived, if the Cuba files hold the truth, then Diddy might not just be tied to a murder. He might be tied to the greatest disappearing act in modern music history. For 30 years, the world accepted one version of Tupac Shakur's death, shot in Vegas. Died 6 days later. Case closed. But now, with his own brother questioning the story, with federal tapes linking Diddy to $1 million hit, with Cuba surfacing in a criminal raid, and with Diddy's empire being exposed as an alleged machine of fear, silence, and power, the cracks in that story are impossible to ignore. And maybe they were never supposed to hold, because if Mopreme Shakur is right, if the truth always comes out, then we're not just revisiting a cold case. We're about to watch the most carefully guarded myth in hip-hop collapse in real time. Tupac once said, "I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee I will spark the brain that will." Maybe that spark is happening right now.